My grandma used to tell me scary stories when I was little. There's one I'll never forget, no matter how many years pass, or how much I try to convince myself that it was just a tale meant to spook a child. I was 10 years old when Grandma came to live with us. Back then, I didn't really understand grief, not properly. I didn't realize how much she must have been hurting or how heavy the silence in her old house must have been after Granddad passed away. Looking back now, as an adult, I can picture it too well. The empty corridors, the dust settling on unused furniture, the radio she no longer turned on because every song reminded her of something. Of him. So when she finally agreed, or maybe just surrendered, to moving in with us, it was like she brought a whole different world with her. My mom protested a bit, muttering about space and routines, about how Grandma had her ways. But my dad insisted, and eventually, she came to stay in the spare room across from mine. I didn't complain. I loved Grandma. She was loud, fun, unpredictable. She had this way of making ordinary moments feel like small adventures. She always had boiled sweets, hidden in one pocket or another, and she'd sneak me some when Mum wasn't looking. She'd always defend me too, stepping in with a sharp tongue when I got scolded for something. But most of all, I loved her stories. She had stories for everything. Her childhood during the war, the mischief she and her friends got up to, on the coast after being evacuated, the rumors from her old village about ghosts and strange happenings. Some were silly, some sad, and some sounded like the kind of adventures I wished I could live. But her scary stories, those were something else entirely. She told them differently. She slowed down, lowered her voice, let the room darken with nothing but the moonlight leaking through the curtains. She'd sit close to me, so close I could smell the sweet mint scent of her breath and hear the slight tremble in her voice as she spoke. Her blue eyes would fix on mine, unblinking until I felt the hairs on my arms prickle. Most of them I forgot, but one story stayed with me forever. The story of the shower and of Mr. Longfingers. It started on a night when I asked her why she always preferred baths. She took impossibly long ones, lighting candles, humming old songs, soaking until the water went cold, and the bathroom filled with fog, thick as smoke. It drove my mum insane, but Grandma said it was the only place she could relax. It's the only place that's safe to relax, she corrected, leaning closer on my bed. People like me, people who are sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths. Long ones. We can't risk showers. Risk? I asked, feeling that familiar thrill of dread and interest. Why? She glanced toward the window first, as though checking something outside, then turned back to me with a seriousness that made my stomach flutter. Well, she began slowly, you only need to be careful in the shower if you close your eyes too long. 5 seconds is fine. 10 is pushing it. But any longer than that. She let the words hang in the air like the last note of a warning bell. I swallowed. Why? What happens? You know that game kids play, where someone turns around and counts and the others creep up behind them as quietly as they can? I nodded, clutching my blanket. Well, she whispered, that's how it is in the shower. That's how it is with Mr. Longfingers. A cold tremor ran down my back. Who's Mr. Longfingers? No one knows for sure. Her voice dropped to a murmur. Some think he's a creature drawn to the heat we give off in the shower. Others think he slips into our world through the steam. But what everyone agrees on is this. If you close your eyes too long, he notices. My throat tightened. Notices what? That you're not watching. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. They say if you go past 15 seconds, Grandma continued, you might start to hear something. A tapping, soft, rhythmic, a set of long fingers drumming on the glass of the shower door. And if you ever hear that sound, she leaned so close, I could feel her breath on my cheek. Promise me something, sweetheart. My voice barely came out. What? Never. Open your eyes. I didn't sleep properly for a week. Every time I shut my eyes, even in bed, I imagined something standing just out of sight, something tall, thin, with fingers too long to belong to a normal person. In my dreams, it stood beside the shower, waiting for me to blink. Too long. And in the shower itself, that was the worst. Shampoo got in my eyes constantly because I kept opening them too early. Every second I counted felt like a step towards something horrible. I'd feel a pressure in the air, like someone holding their breath, like something waiting. My mom noticed the nightmares and demanded I tell her what was going on. When she heard about Grandma's story, she was furious. Not at me. but at Grandma. That night, through the thin wall between their room and mine, I heard Mum hissing angrily at my dad. She's terrified him with some ridiculous monster story. You talk to her tomorrow, or I will. The next evening, Grandma visited me. She looked sadder than I'd ever seen her. She touched my hand gently and said, "You know I'd never let anything hurt you, right?" I nodded. "I only wanted to teach you to be careful. Maybe I took it too far. But don't worry, I'll deal with Mr. Longfingers. I'll scare him off myself." I believed her. A week later, I was the one who found her. I woke early to a strange, heavy thumping, followed by the sound of running water. The shower. I ran to the bathroom door and banged on it, shouting her name. No answer. The handle turned easily. It wasn't locked. A wave of thick steam pushed out, and through it I saw her, lying on the shower floor, eyes wide, hand curled against the glass. The steam patterns showed the dragging marks her fingers had made. Dad said she died of a heart attack. Quick. Painless. But I knew better. Even then. I know it even more now. I haven't taken a shower since that day. My wife thinks it's trauma. She thinks I'm scared of the memory of seeing my grandmother dead. She's wrong, because later that day, after they took Grandma's body away and everyone else was downstairs crying and making phone calls, I crept back into the bathroom. One more time. The steam was still clinging to the glass. And when I looked closely at the marks her fingers had left, I saw something that froze me to the bone, something I've never told anyone, because those finger marks weren't only on the inside. There were matching marks dragged down from the outside too. My uncle died and left me his house, and a terrifying secret. Our prayers were opening doors to horrors hiding beneath reality. Uncle Jonas was always a recluse. My mom said Vietnam destroyed him, turning her goofy big brother into someone cold and haunted. After my grandma died, he stayed alone in her old farmhouse, filling it with junk, occult trinkets, and things he collected from garage sales. My mom hated how he ruined the place, but as a kid, I loved exploring it. When I was 12, they had their final blowout, and we stopped visiting. Jonas and I only kept in touch through email until life pulled us apart. He used to tell me legends and warnings, strange stories about spirits, doors between worlds, and something buried beneath the town. I thought it was harmless eccentricity. So when he died and left everything to me, I never expected the horror hidden in that house. The place looked worse than ever. Dust thick as felt, boxes stacked like crooked tombstones. But the comics and collectibles were gone. Instead, there were journals, old photos, and items that looked like ritual artifacts. The house creaked constantly, as if breathing. That first night I slept there, I dreamt of Jonas standing at my bed. His eyes were hollow, his skin gray, and his whisper layered like several voices speaking at once. "Finish it." I woke drenched in sweat. While cleaning, I found a false wall in the attic. Behind it was a pristine study. Nothing like the rest of the house. Shelves of ancient books lined the walls. A green stained glass window shaped like an eye watched over the room, and a skylight opened to the sky with a mechanical hum. On a pedestal lay a journal full of symbols, clippings, and frantic notes. Jonas wrote about something called the Order of the Verdant Root. According to him, an ancient evil was sealed beneath the town's oldest church. Christianity, he said, didn't protect people. It fed the entity. Every prayer and sermon eroded the seal that kept it imprisoned. I assumed he'd gone mad. But after days with little sleep, I started seeing things. Shadows shifted when I wasn't looking. Whispers seeped through walls. My reflection lagged behind my movements. And then I found it. The photograph that ripped away any doubt. A Polaroid dated 1971. Robed figures around a stone altar stained with blood. In later photos, children's bodies lay carved open. And behind the humans were shapes that weren't human at all. Twisted, warped bodies caught in flashes of light. Not tricks, not imaginations. He hadn't been lying. Jonas had been recruited in Vietnam by a soldier named Callahan, the last descendant of a lineage sworn to guard the seal beneath the church. The modern church twisted that ancient duty, using worship to weaken the barrier. If the order failed, the creatures would break through. 2 days until the full moon, I prepared using Jonas's notes, roots, oils, talismans, and then, on the chosen night, I went to the church. The silence inside felt wrong. Following Jonas's directions, I found the hidden staircase behind the altar. In the cellar, the air reeked of rot and old blood. Chanting rose from deeper underground. I crept forward until I reached a vast chamber lit by an eerie green glow, and I saw them, the same creatures from the photos. Misshapen hybrids of human and something monstrous. Taloned limbs scraped the stone, their eyes burned with malice. A dead child lay on the ground beside the altar. The creatures were performing the ritual again. Shaking, I gripped the talisman. I whispered the incantation. A creature lunged at me, claws ripping across my chest. I staggered but didn't stop. With all my strength, I threw the talisman at the altar. Light exploded. The ground shook. Roots tore through the stone floor, whipping around the creatures, dragging them into the earth. One grabbed my ankle, dragging me toward a hole. I slashed wildly with a knife, cutting off its hand and scrambling away. Screams echoed off the walls as the things were torn underground. Then the church bell tolled. I ran. But I knew the truth now. Jonas hadn't died crazy. He died fighting something real. The Order of the Verdant Roots still had work to do. And now the responsibility had passed to me. I'm searching for others who can hear the call. Are you one of us? My wife Lynn has been peeking at me from around corners, behind doors, under furniture. At first it was strange, then it was unsettling. Now it's something else. Something I don't even have a name for. Something that feels wrong in the deepest part of me. We've been together 6 years, married for 11 months. Lynn was always normal, grounded, serious. She never played pranks, never joked around, never liked horror or anything remotely creepy. She couldn't even finish watching The Shining with me. That was Lynn. Rational, soft-spoken, steady. Which is exactly why none of what happened makes sense. The first time was 2 months ago. I was running late for work, rushing down the hallway with a cup of coffee. As I moved toward the front door, something caught my eye. Lynn's eyes staring at me from around the corner. Just her eyes and a sliver of her hair. The rest of her body was hidden behind the wall. When I flinched and said her name, she pulled back like an embarrassed kid and scampered toward the living room. By the time I reached the door, she was gone. I called her a weirdo, and she laughed. I brushed it off and forgot it by lunchtime. 3 nights later, around 2 a.m., I got up for a drink. I was standing in the kitchen drinking orange juice straight from the jug when that awful being watched feeling crawled up my spine. I looked down, and there was Lynn on the floor, grinning up at me from the other side of the kitchen island, eyes wide, too wide, unblinking. Smile stretched unnaturally across her face. I yelled, stumbled back, and she scuttled away on all fours, her hands and feet tapping rapidly against the tile like an animal escaping. When I went to bed minutes later, she was already there, asleep, breathing deeply like nothing had happened. After that, it got worse. I saw her peeking at me from behind the living room curtains, behind the couch, through the half-open bedroom door. Once, she was inside her grandmother's old trunk, at the foot of our bed, lid barely cracked open, half her face visible, smiling as if she'd been waiting for me. When I asked her why she was doing it, she didn't answer. She simply lowered the trunk lid over herself and hid inside. I kept telling myself she was being silly, trying something new, trying to play, but it didn't feel like play. It felt like something watching me that just happened to be wearing my wife's face. Then came the shower. I was rinsing shampoo out of my hair when I felt that crawling sensation again. I opened my eyes and almost slipped. Lynn was sticking her entire head past the shower curtain. Her body remained behind it, but her face, God, her eyes were wide and bloodshot, her grin stretched, her hair dripping onto the curtain. Mascara streamed down her face in twin black paths. She didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't even breathe loudly. She just stared at me with that gaping smile. She slowly pulled her head back, then slammed the bathroom door so hard the mirror rattled. I locked the door and stayed inside for an hour. I yelled at her, cursed, demanded she stop. Nothing back except a faint moan and silence. When I finally checked under the door, expecting to see her feet, the hallway was empty. But she hadn't left. She was in the closet, peeking out at me through the crack of the door, eyes wide, trembling with excitement, hands clasped to her chest like she'd been waiting for me to notice her. Her smile was wrong, too big, too alive. I didn't scream. I just ran. Out of the bathroom, down the stairs, out the house barefoot and wet, straight to my car. I heard her laughing from somewhere inside the house, but she didn't chase me. I didn't stop driving until I reached my brother Chris's house 40 minutes away. I ignored Lynn's calls and texts. When I finally looked at my phone, all her messages were normal, loving, concerned, like she hadn't spent weeks sneaking around corners with a deranged grin. I slept on Chris's couch, barely. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her peeking out of somewhere she shouldn't be. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke up just after sunrise. And then I felt it, that awful, heavy sensation of being watched. I looked at the window. Her face was pressed to the glass, grinning, drool streaking down, leaving wet trails. I pounded the window and shouted at her to go home. She didn't move. Her smile just widened. When Chris and his wife came downstairs, Lynn vanished. No footprints outside, just 2 streaks drying on the glass. Chris didn't believe me. Rebecca tried to comfort me. I stayed another night. The next day, Rebecca casually said Lynn had come by in the morning while I was still asleep, saying she was worried about me, saying she wanted me to come home. She looked awful, Rebecca said, like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go home. I didn't feel safe, but she was my wife. And if she was sick, if something was wrong, I needed to help her. I tried calling her, no answer, not a text, not a missed call, nothing. A pit grew in my stomach. I drove home around sunset. The house looked dark, motionless. My heart hammered as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything was exactly how I left it, except one thing, a note. On the kitchen table, in Lynn's handwriting, "Come find me, I've gotten better at hiding." The house creaked. Something shifted in the walls, and then from somewhere deep inside the darkness, inches from my ear, a slow, trembling whisper, "Found you."